right, I think we're live. This is how
I think we're live.
we should call this show. I think we're live because that's how I started every time. You don't really know. You never know. But here, what?
Yeah.
But I am going to start trying to amp up our production value. So
XR Talk with Paul and Spencer.
it's another Wednesday.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick Lambertropolis of Instagram. So I kind of kept you in the dark about our guest.
Yeah, I know, and I feel a little bummed about that. Actually, I feel kind of like maybe you're trying to take the show away from me.
Well, that's so.
You know?
The real story is I've been auditioning new co-hosts, and
fuck.
so
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I figured that was coming.
But
yeah.
do you want to know who our guest is?
I do. I really do. So, I mean, there's people. If it's an ex-leaper, it's someone we worked with at Magic Leap, and there's some people that I would love to see, and there's some people. If you bring them on, I will literally come over to your house and stop the broadcast.
Well, I think you're gonna be happy about this one, and so it's really funny. So we have a Discord chat. If you go to chat.xrtalk.net, that's where we kind of talk about this stuff throughout the week, share links. And we kind of drop hints about the show. And it was funny because people were guessing. People were trying to guess who it might be. But I think the suspense is...
What were the guesses?
John Gata was... Well, here you go. John Gata was one. Somebody guessed Micah.
Nice. Yeah, that would be one of those. Yeah.
I think we should reveal. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's reveal. Oh, hey. It's Shanna Banana.
I'm always a secret, aren't I? It's the only way to do it.
Mm-hmm. We're so excited. Yeah, you're our first former colleague to join the show.
All right.
Yeah, you beat Josh.
Yeah.
Michael Green. You beat everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were the very first.
Yeah.
I'm doing well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a huge honor to have you here. So we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. We're actually not going to do any of the news type of stuff we do because I think we got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. So what I thought would be cool would be to kind of talk about how I first met Shanna. Actually, Spencer, you probably just came to Florida one day and there was Shanna. Was that the...
No, I interviewed Shanna.
Did you interview her in the
on the first day? Yeah. I said, okay, guy with the nail polish, like that guy is going to be my friend. That was...
Well, I had lunch with her at the Dakota K Cafe, which is
yeah. Well, you were a little higher up than I was at that point, so that you rated the Amex Dakota K Cafe.
Oh man, tell you what,
we just smoked cigarettes next to the garbage cans.
Yeah, and the red couch. He found me on the red couch.
Right.
The quick inside baseball there, because I do want to tell a little backstory, but Magic Leap's first big office was basically in a very strange shopping mall that was guarded, and you had to check in with a front desk person to come shop there because it was designed for high-end interior designers to buy really fancy stuff for really wealthy people. And
it was like super, super big in the 80s.
Yeah, and so so that business apparently wasn't panning out, so they started leasing out these giant retail spaces as office space, and so it was a sweet deal, especially for a startup. But it was really weird because we worked in a shopping mall, and then of course we were super secure, so we had to do all this stuff. And they're like, look, I could tell stories about Dakota all day, doors not locking, all this stuff, but there was nowhere to eat. It was a mall, but there was one restaurant called and so the facility was called the Design Center of the Americas, DCOTA, and it was the Dakota K Cafe. And if you're a vegetarian or vegan, there's two things you could eat. So I always had the same thing every time. I'm a vegetarian. And and Roni eats vegan, which so that was always weird. And they eventually made a salad with his name or whatever. But
they called it the Roni or something like that, right? Yeah.
So anyway, there's some really funny Dakota stories. But
there was a bathtub in one of the places downstairs that was marble this thick.
Yeah.
And it had solid brass fittings, and it was just this incredible thing. And I think it was like $24,000.
Yeah.
For the bathtub. And they never sold it. I mean, in the 4 years I was there, it was always there. It was
There was that one store where you could buy an Aston Martin couch or Ferrari Chase lounge.
Right. Yeah.
There was huh?
Fur wallpaper. There literally was a store selling fur wallpaper. Yeah.
There was a one time there was a store clearing out, and they'd pulled out, and eventually Magic Leap grew to the point where we took over multiple spaces, but they weren't connected. So you had to walk through this mall to get to other people's offices sometimes. And I was walking from one office to another through the mall, and there was a store clearing out, and there's this big wooden hand carved headboard, just the headboard, no frame, no flipboard or anything, just this really ornate thing. And it was leaning, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna have a clearance sale." And I just looked at the price tag as I was walking by. It was $18,000 for a headboard. Some people live a different life than we do.
Yes.
So my little backstory is going to kind of set up, I think, a lot of at least the first part of this conversation. So when Spencer and I joined Magic Leap essentially together, and we were not in that big Dakota office. It was in a little tiny shared office park, not too far down the road. Very small.
It used to be a dentist office.
Yeah, it was. Right? And there was the only piece of hardware was the big bench top, or the Beast, as some people know it. I always call it the big bench top. And so at the time, our demo, what we saw was, I don't know if you remember this, Spencer, or maybe I'm not remembering it fully correctly, but at the time, Mick Orbick was giving a lot of the benchtop demos. And so the way the flow would work is you would go in and you would get the demo, and then you would be scheduled to meet with Roni after in his office, and he would kind of, or sometimes they would flip it, but the dynamic was you would see this kind of really crazy technology, and you still be kind of processing what you saw, and then now you're talking to someone who's already thought through like the vision of this, and so it's really,
and all the possibilities, and right,
and so it's this really compelling thing, and quite frankly, that's how they recruited people to be hired. That's how they got investment. Like the power of the demo was a really big thing, and as the company grew, so there was kind of these like go-to demo people. It was Mick for a lot of time, and then it was Sam Miller for a lot of the time, and Sam was a part of the original founding team, so he had a little bit of that. He could talk a little bit of the Roni kind of vision talk, but he could also talk about nuts and bolts. And but then these are real. These people had other jobs, right? Mick is an engineer, and Sam's overseeing a team, and so as we started to scale up, I got pulled into the demo circuit where I was starting to guide demos, and then then we started having like different types of visitors, and it could be a job candidate, it could be an investor, it could be a celebrity, it could be what, and we would determine like what they would see based on time and what we wanted to show them and all this stuff. But it was still this kind of crazy circus demo thing where I finally had my little bit of patter that I was doing, and we were just trying to figure out like, how is this going to scale? Like I was having to get called in, and we're trying to cover shifts. So finally, after, Shanna, when did you start?
August of 2015.
So
yeah,
so
we did 2015.
So we did that for over a year. We kind of covered demos, and we were like, this is nuts. Like there should be, this is such an important function of the company. And I think at the time, the mentality was, well, these are just demos, and we really need to be focusing on building up the company and the product, and we'll just cover it with people. And then I think everyone finally realized, no, this is a part of what we have to do. Demos are so important. And so we finally figured out we needed to like staff this up and figure out a way to have people dedicated to this idea of telling our story and like guiding people. And so we opened up that role, and that's what we hired Shanna for. And
funny enough, though, I actually applied over 100 times within a year for that job.
I didn't know
so
that.
The name of it. Yeah, they just kept changing the title, but the job description was the same. And I'm like, this job is made for me. Like, how do I get in the door? And so I did. I just every day I would get up and apply again. I'm like, I know this is the place for me.
Yeah,
right.
And it really worked out. But it really opened my eyes to how powerful it is. It's also a great way to kind of consolidate the big vision. And then, Ronnie's real particular about how that story's told, because it's kind of, it's his story that's crafted over time. And the other interesting part of it is when you do it for years, the story does evolve, so you can hit the right points, and you might, you learn all the questions people are going to ask, and you're running a show, you're running an experience. So
I gotta say, so, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here, but one of the things that we were doing before, BS, before Shanna, was that we were doing everything in this shitty spare room with like whiteboards with some crap on it that had been half erased, and there was a stool over there, and then maybe someone spilled some coffee on the carpet.
Fluorescent walls, yeah,
it was just awful.
But
and the
some
first
of that
thing
was on purpose.
Yeah, but it was not great for showing to to celebrities and heads of state. So the first thing that Shanna did was she came in and she was like, "Oh yeah, we're getting hue lights and we're going to paint the walls and we're getting some furniture in here." And she actually made a kind of a living room space at the Dakota that sorry, I'm to third person here with Shanna, but
if only she were here.
But the ideal demo room, right? It's your home.
I felt so great when you came in there, because I'd been thinking about this and talking about it for a while, and they're like, yeah, sure, maybe at some point, and then you came in and you like just freaking grabbed that and ran with it, and it really, really upped our whole like demo scene. Just having the background in there, and then you got your pattern and stuff.
Yeah,
like
and the demos also in that period of time of growth got more complex. Like when Spencer and I started, it was go look at the big bench top. Nick's gonna run a couple things for you. Go talk to Ronnie, and then it evolved because and this is where we're not gonna delve into anything secret, but we did start showing multiple things, and the whole story was cohesive, but it got more complex to and it we had to shuffle people around, and there was once Shanna was fully dedicated, then it was like, oh man, we can schedule demos day in and day out, 7 days a week.
She never needs to sleep.
And it was getting more complex because we were adding things like gesture, and there was interactions with it. Whereas when I started, it's like you just saw this, this light on the table.
Yeah.
And it's like by the time, we were evolving and getting through these different, early prototypes, it was just adding more and more of those interactions. So it went from, we have a couple things to show to like, okay, this is going to be a 3 to 4 hour demo sometimes, depending on who the audience was,
So that's kind of how we that's how we came to work together, and that's kind of a little bit of backstory around the importance of at least to Magic Leap, but a lot of companies' importance to the demo. But so maybe we should back it up a little bit and talk about your past experience. Why you knew that position was perfect for you? Was it because of stuff you had worked on, or it was where you wanted to go? And then we can talk about all your journey up until now too. But it'd be cool to hear your background before you joined Magic Leap.
So, I definitely was not in XR or, mixed reality or VR even at that point. I had done my first VR experience, I'd say, as like a 10-year-old at the mall, right? But since then, I hadn't really tried any of those experiences. And I saw the post for Magic Leap after they had gotten their first investment. Mm-hmm. And I went to art school. My degree was in wood sculpting with a chainsaw. And then the recession hit. And so the recession hit, I fell into IT. And so I had worked as a contractor for IBM and, really was focused on more of like, voice video data infrastructure, but nothing really at this level. And so when I saw Magic Leap, it just the early marketing for it, which showed nothing, really, showed this artistic, kind of vision mixed with technology. And so I thought if I could merge my two passions into one, that it was the ideal kind of dream world for me. So once I saw that post about Magic Leap, that pretty much I was dead set. It was my first pick on places I wanted to end up, which is why I started beating down the door.
And you showed up to your interview with us in some kind of like super slinky dress thing and your chucks.
Yeah.
Right?
It was still photos back then.
Yeah.
And I had a little black dress with a bright red jacket, bright red lipstick, and pinup hair, right? Because I walked in there thinking I've got nothing to lose. Like that was my take on it. I had another job offer at the time. And so it was like, okay, like this is my dream and I have nothing to lose. I'm just going to put myself out there and really, just see where this takes me. And after 10 hours of interviews, and I drove 4 hours to get there that morning. Drove 4 hours to get there, and then 10 hours.
Because you were on the other side of the Florida.
Yeah,
right.
Florida originally. So it was one of those. I left there thinking this was the best day of my life. And there's that song, I think it's even called "The Best Day of My Life." And if you ever see the video, it looks like the Shaggles in it. So I got home that night and I went to post that video on my social pages and was like, holy shit, it's the Shaggles. Like this could
it's a sign.
Yeah.
You went to Ringling, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
That was my dream school when I was like a little kid. It was like I wanted to be a designer and I wanted to go to Ringling, Sarasota.
Well, I'm proud to say they were actually one of the first colleges, they were the first college to have a major in AR and VR.
Really? I didn't know that.
They delivered their Magic Leap devices, actually.
Oh, that's cool. I had
my
no idea.
In for demos at Magic Leap, which was really cool too.
Oh, wow. So you basically, you got heaved the load of demos when you started, and you brought a level of focus and really attention that it needed that we weren't really able to give it as side hustles. Basically, we were trying to run demos otherwise, but then it seemed like then things kind of evolved in, I think, I don't know, my sense of it, maybe just before I left, or maybe was that finally the realization came that demos were a bigger part of telling the story. It had it is a part of marketing. It is a function of marketing, and it seems like you really wanted to push it in that direction. And so so I know a lot of things we wanted to talk about was like the power of demonstrating these new technologies to people and telling a story, and or another way to say that is like experiential marketing, right? So that's kind of what started off as you're going to give demos for this weird startup to people. I'm sure you have a lot of great thoughts on the kind of like foundation that's set for you now, like going forward.
Yeah, I feel like, when I got to Magic Leap, there wasn't really a script. It's not like anybody sat me down and said, hey, this is what you're going to say. It was really just sitting in there and listening to Sam and listening to you and understanding mixed messaging and then taking all of that and trying to create it into my own. Mm-hmm. And then as I kind of went through presenting the demos, because within, what was it, less than a week of getting there, I took over the lower level demos, like the candidates and like, some of the developers, not that they're low level, but developers coming in versus investor level. And so right off the bat, I was just grabbing people. I brought people's parents through so I could practice on them. But it really was a testing ground to understand the messaging. But you also realize how to walk somebody through the experience. Like you can't just say, okay, I want you to go do this on the device. It was like, no, I want you to point the ray from the control at this, and I want you to snap the trigger. This is what you should see. But it was really about understanding like what they were doing, and then also tailoring the message based on the audience. Mm-hmm. The same message did not work across the board. I mean, 10,000 people in 4 years through those experiences.
Really?
10,000 1,000. And that doesn't include, training AT&T associates or call centers, or, I mean, it really was one of those that was just people that walked into the Magic Leap, facility.
Oh.
And it was insane. And it sucks a little bit now because after having so many people through and you meet so many people, unfortunately, I am the worst with names now.
Yeah.
Firing, people at me constantly, sometimes 100 people a day.
Really? Yeah. I mean, yeah. So that was a little bit after my time where really the what better reference for how you scale this thing up to a retail setting and to a training setting than giving literally thousands of demos to people and seeing what resonates with them, the questions they ask, maybe even preempting those questions so like you can get to your points and stuff. I mean, it is this really and like to kind of tie it back to our audience, like we have talked in the past, like Spencer and I have talked about when we do an AR, like even a tablet-based AR experience in a public venue, you are a docent in a lot of ways, and you're guiding someone. You're the voice. You're the Sherpa through the experience. And
well, yeah, I was going to ask that question actually because like Paul was saying, we've talked in the past about how do you someone has never seen augmented reality before. I mean, on a tablet, it's a little different because they're going to be compelled to pinch and zoom because they've used a tablet before. But with the headset, it's like it's in the frickin' room. But how do you kind of prep them for the need to walk around the thing and not just look at it from one? Like, did you come up with kind of a shtick to get them to understand the volumetric nature of it?
I had to encourage people to walk around because people forgot that they're mobile. And so it was one of those, you would see them standing in the same place. And I think what a lot of people forget about these types of technology and putting on a head mount display is it's intimidating. Like, people are scared. And, I came in there and didn't realize that. And then after presenting to probably 500 people, I actually had a guest, we were out at dinner, and he said to me, yeah, it was really scary when I first walked in. And so part of my job was to try and get
like scary.
Exactly. Like, what is scary, But I had to understand, like, okay, they're nervous or they're anxious or they're overly excited, and really figure out how to tailor my messaging. But I think a lot of it, as weird as it sounds, it was about reading their energy. Like, you have to know when somebody's frustrated to like change your tone. And, I noticed, especially with investors that might not be the most tech savvy, that not only did I have to slow down, being from the Northeast, I talk fast and I'm loud. I had to slow down. I would lower my voice. And if I were standing and they were sitting, I would actually kneel down because it was like being taller than them. It's even more intimidating, So
I learned that at the aquarium, when you have a child or even someone in an assistance device, and their head is lower than yours, when you're describing something to them, get it eye level.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
And the other tip too was learning how to talk to the dumbest part of your brain first. I mean, it was one of those that, like, if you overwhelm somebody the moment they walk in, you've lost them.
Yeah.
And so it's like starting off with like this fluffy little green dragon and then going slowly into more complex things. But you wanted to show them things that they knew and understood before you just jump into something extremely complex, Right. But It was about using small vocabulary and simplifying things.
I mean, we even experienced the fear thing in the early demos, like the big benchtop. Did you ever have to give a big benchtop demo?
I did.
They're so finicky because your eyes have to be in just the right spot to see anything. And basically, you can put your head in that thing, and everything can be adjusted. And if you're just a centimeter one way or the other, you won't see anything. And as the person giving the demo, you have to ask. And I had more than one time somebody was like, I'd be like, do you see it? Do you see the thing? Because you don't want to spoil the surprise. And they're like, yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. And then I like.
And they're lying.
Well, I only knew because it wasn't turned on. It wasn't. So it's like, how?
I don't want to feel stupid. So yeah, I see the thing.
So the
emperor has got beautiful clothes.
Yeah, it's really interesting that's people. People don't want to let you down. They don't want to seem like the one that doesn't get it. I think there's a lot of that.
Yeah, there definitely is, for sure. Well, and that was the thing is like, I would watch what people would do. Like, did they click the wrong button? I mean, that was a big thing. People would hit the wrong things. And I either, on the early days, I had a monitor that I could see what they were seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But in the later days of development, it's like, only God knows what they're seeing, So I would have to listen to audio cues in the experiences. And if it didn't sound like they were in the right place, I would try and look in the front of the device to see that little image you can see, so that I didn't have to ask them to take it off.
Yeah.
Because the more you ask them to take the device off, it's like, if I have to ask once, I failed, So it really, it was one of those experiences that you had to just focus on your customer.
Jörg!
Oh, look
I'm sorry. Jörg is on board.
So,
we've got some other colleagues in the chat, so I'm going to throw that out there.
yeah, so I mean, I think the biggest thing was about really observing the people that came through and not just assuming that they got it. I mean, it was like you have to like slow down and make sure, okay, they get it, they got the point, now move on to the next thing, But it was fun. I mean, I have to say, I had a lot of fun.
So we do have a couple relevant questions. Our friend Tara, who was a wonderful guest recently, wanted to know, like, did you look at the backgrounds of people before they came in and try to tune, or like did you get a little debrief before you actually started giving the demos?
This person is afraid of robots, that kind of thing. Right?
I actually, especially in the early days, I would write bios for each of the guests that were coming in. I have to say that, unfortunately, that fell off after we got so busy, because in the early days,
after you got to like bio number 10,000.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, once the team started growing, it's like, okay, you're trying to really study each guest. But I did try to, especially if they were important demos, you really want to know who they are. I feel like I missed some opportunities. I definitely had a lot of celebrities and a lot of influencers that walked in the door. And to me, anybody that walked in the door, it didn't matter if you were a celebrity or a gamer or a developer, like it really was my job was to really get you excited about the product and to excite you about it. Mm-hmm. So it didn't matter who walked in the door. Like my job was always the same. And I'm not a celebrity person, so that part never mattered to me. But I definitely had some people in the door that it's like, God, I wish I would have had that relationship still now,
Right.
Celebrities have been some of the worst demos because they're a little more entitled. Like they don't want to listen.
Yeah, I have to say the tech nerds, 100% my favorite guest. Yeah. I was like, I want tech nerds all day. Like join my club, we can all geek out together. It was a blast, Whereas celebrities, they definitely were like, okay, this is cool, but like they weren't as friendly or, they weren't as excited. Yeah. And being that kind of feeds off people's energy, like those demos weren't as fun for me,
I gotta say, when we moved the operation over to Plantation, and then you guys built up the big giant demo room and stuff,
2,400 square feet, yeah.
That was incredible, and one of the things that really just like sticks with me still is that you knew more about the individual test systems, and their monikers, their names, their little like, oh, this one needs a ROM upgrade or this one needs that, like you knew you were like this super techie, and then you had the whole Vanna White thing, and then you would switch into techie mode and you go into Vanna White mode. It was just like, it was freaking rad. I loved watching you do that.
I loved that part of my job. Truthfully, working with engineers was probably the best experiences for me, because the engineers wanted to hear from me. Like they didn't get to see the responses and the reactions that I saw every day. And so I think that was one of the biggest things that I felt like I got to impact the product by working with the engineers. But I also will say the first time I had a candidate come in that asked me about like 3DOF and 6DOF, I was like, what? Like, I didn't know what that meant. And so I had to keep asking a lot of questions. And so I would go and if somebody was working on something cool as I'm walking by, I literally would just pop at their desk and I would sit down and be like, what are you working on? Like, and that's how I found a lot of my demos too, between that and And like there was First Fridays where you could walk around and see what everybody's working on in development. I found a lot of really great experiences that wouldn't have been brought into demos if we weren't walking around and checking out what everybody's doing. But the engineers were some of the most amazing support that I could ever ask for in my career, because they really educated me on the technology to the point that I did become a master in it. And it's like I could break apart every single component of it. It was, I mean, that I still have my Magic Leap one. It's my baby. I was one of those that when I was leaving, I'm like, look, like, I feel like I got to help build this. Like, this is not something I can just walk away from and say, oh, like, you know, I left Magic Leap, goodbye to my device. It's like, no, like, it is really made me who I am. I will say that. But the tech side is something, you know, I wish I could be an engineer. It's one of those. I really wish I could make these experiences. But I am very thankful for the support that I had from everyone around me in growing in myself, and also in helping grow, you know, the whole demo process at Magic Leap.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just so, like, you know, like I said at the beginning, like, it's so underestimated. You know, I think we kind of fell into it, and then once we saw the power of it, thankfully we invested in it and made it an important. I mean, you know, it's almost like I can even think back in the early days, like, oh man, it'll be great once we get a product out there, because then we won't have to have people come to Florida for demos. And it's like, well, actually, this is all so new, and I wanted to kind of tie that thought into like our audience and the types of things we talk about. So if there's anyone watching this that's like, well, I'm a developer, like, I'm never going to be an experiential marketer for an XR company, or that's not what I want to do. Or, you know, like, I'm in the marketing side, I'm never going to be a developer. Just to kind of put a finer point on it, I mean, we are all working in this cutting edge technology that is so strange that people don't understand it. They don't know what it can do for them. They don't know why they want it. And so it really benefits you, even if you're an engineer and you only want to focus on building things. Your ability to present and explain those things and have people get excited about them, as excited as you were to make them, is so powerful. And that's why this was such a great, I was so excited when you said you were able to come on, because I think a lot of people don't think about how important it is to present your work and make sure people are comfortable with it and like they're excited about it. It is such a key part of this becoming the future of computing, like a lot of us believe it will be, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's truthfully, like, when I got the position at Magic Leap and started doing the demos, I think that no one could deny that, you know, I was extremely passionate about what I was doing there. And I think that's the reason why I succeeded so much in my position, was that, you know, no one ever questioned my passion. Like, it just poured out. I was excited to show it. And I that's one of the tips for developers. Like, you don't necessarily need the marketing person, but you definitely need somebody that is, you know, more excited or more passionate. So if it's your project and you're excited about it, like, people see that, you know? Yeah. And if you're not really pushing that passion through it, it's not going to be as successful. It's like, if you're not drinking your own Kool-Aid, you can't expect someone else to. And so it was definitely, I think, a big differentiator in the success of presenting these types of technology. Was, you know, no one, I mean, it's like, I knew it inside and out because I loved it. I used it every day. And so for developers, I would say, you know, absolutely, like, you know, drink your Kool-Aid, like, get excited about your product. If not, why are you making it, you know? And right, because that's the hardest part. Like, if you're not excited, that's not the right fit, you know?
Well, one advantage you have in that arrangement is you're excited about the benefit, and you're promoting. I think a lot of us, myself included, especially somebody that's artistic or is a creator, we tend to be our own worst critic, and it's something you have to try to get over. And you tend, like, I still do this to this day. I've always been told I don't, like, hype myself up enough, because our mind is filled with so much, like, well, I could have done this better, or I'm so deep into this world, I know all the other things people are working on, and I'm not necessarily doing something. But you gotta learn to turn that off, because the person you're talking to in that moment doesn't know all that stuff, and frankly doesn't want to, and wants to connect with you. And I still struggle with it, but I think it's such an exciting, you like you said, you like to work with engineers, and probably a part of that energy you feed off of is like, man, I'm going to take this cool thing you built that you're just tinkering with. That's going to be become part of the demo. That's how cool this is. Like, do you understand that, like, this is a big deal?
Right.
And they're like, I don't know, I was just goofing around. You're like, no, this is cool.
No, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and we went into like LeapCon, for instance, and it's like there was like 20 some different experiences at that event. And I basically went around and I made each of the developers present to me as if I were a guest, because they were all going to be presenting their own demos.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked up to one of like the top developers, and the guy is holding this piece of paper and he's shaking as he's reading it to me. He's like, it's a board game, blah, blah, blah. And so after we got done, I was like, throw the fucking paper away. It's like, you look in front of you.
It shows you shaking. Don't hold that.
I mean, first off, I'm really scary, right? But it was really trying to get the developers to understand, like you need to be human. Like, this is one of those demos that, like, as you walk people through these experiences, like, be human. Don't sit there trying to give all the marketing messaging in the world. I mean, if you think about the Steve Jobs way, you've got three things, right? And so that's the biggest thing, is that like people either try to say too much, or they start talking about their competitors, which it's like, one, never speak negatively against your competitors. You want to talk about your product. And one thing I learned from press was that you always wanted to try and get back to your point, So it's like, if they take it down some road, it's like, oh yeah, that's great. But, and we have this feature that works this way, and really kind of bring it back to them. And thinking about the question that, was it Tara had?
About the backgrounds, or?
About understanding the backgrounds. So, I had a guest that came in, and they were basically, they were on a bunch of committees for museums. So it's like I tailored that messaging, to say, okay, think about what a museum looks like, because you have to understand what's important to them. Yeah. And then, basically go play onto that. I will say that I was never one to sit there and stroke anybody's egos. Like, that was not, that's just not who I am, But it's like, by understanding what they find important, then
people see through that really, really fast.
It's important,
Yeah.
So speaking of steering the conversation, I'm going to give you a. I'm going to give you a.
Nice.
I'm going to
Good
do a
segue.
I'm going to do a choose your own adventure here, because we're a little bit over halfway through, and there's I know there's two main topics that you mentioned you wanted to talk about, and we'd love to hear, and there's actually some relevant questions, so I'm going to let you choose. So, Todd Little was asking about doing remote experiential marketing, which I think is very topical to this current time, which I know you have some thoughts on. But then the other thing that I definitely want to get to, we've spent a lot of time talking about the Magic Leap Pass, but you're actually in a new role working primarily in VR. So like it just depends. Like, what we're going to talk about both, but like what are you feeling? What do you want to talk about?
Start with Todd's question first, because it's extremely relevant given the times. And so, thinking about remote experiential marketing, I actually had a consulting opportunity during this whole COVID thing, and everyone's safer at home, which glad everybody is
at home. Wash your hands.
Yes. But, trying to understand, how do we survive this? And, the hardest part for me is that, my job currently at Within as the head of experiential marketing and community. But overall, my role is to focus on actually putting this on. It's more of a show me, don't tell me type of thing. And so I was working on a consulting project where they had investors engaged, and they needed to understand, how do we get a demo to an investor right now? Like, they're going to ship them a device, but it's a complex head mount display. Like, how do we ship this to them? And then also, how do we walk them through the demo? And so I'm thankful that they had some people who had production skills. So I recorded 35 videos of me going through. Well, because some of it was like certain pieces of it, and it was overkill for sure, but I wanted to make sure they had something good that they could be proud of to put out there. And when you're trying to like record some of this experiential marketing or marketing overall from your home, it's not like right now, like when I'm talking to you guys, like it's natural, it's human, you can see my passion, it's like, instead I'm trying to convey this all through a screen that they're going to watch, 3 days later. And so it was really kind of almost like a kit that we put together with a device. They delivered the device, and then they created, basically they clipped together this YouTube of me going from the very start of these are the components of the device. This is how you turn it on. This is how you mesh your world, and then taking them through the steps of the actual experience. And so I thought that it was a really good thing for me to kind of go through and understanding how we can virtually, get to our investors still. And in my current role, it's like I'm trying to understand, we're in the middle of launching a new product on Quest, a new experience. And so I'm relying heavily on social media as I'm trying to launch this product. And, I'm not a social media expert. I just started using Twitter like last week, I swear. So it's been really interesting to try and understand how do I express my passion in social media, and how do you get that kind of excitement? And I can't say I'm fully successful at that yet, but that would be my one tip I'd say when you're trying to virtually launch a product is you need to make sure that your passion is coming through, whether it's on social media, whether you're recording these videos and sending them to an investor. It definitely helps, because if they're not seeing your passion, again, it's like, yeah. But it also too, I would recommend if you're creating some type of videos, you really have to dumb shit down. Again, it's like, okay, I want you to launch this application. Point the control at the icon. You should see a ray coming from it. Snap the trigger. You don't realize that a lot of people don't read instructions very well or don't listen to instruction very well. So it really is kind of breaking down to say, okay, these are the exact steps to successfully get you through the experience.
Yeah, another thing I would just add to that on video, we've talked about this a few times before, because a lot of people are trying to figure out, like, how do I get people to even understand what I've built, or how do I get them to even understand? And video is really important still, right? We have not yet gotten to the point where the devices are prevalent enough and the delivery and distribution mechanisms are reliable enough to be able to say, to guide them, or even do like a virtual guide type of thing. And so the other thing I would add to that is if you do produce a video, something Spencer's always really great about actually is showing also how is someone interacting with it, like a kind of an over the shoulder or a third person view. We did this a lot with Torch. You do a lot of screen recording to show the interface, and the temptation is just to do a screen recording. Like if you're doing a VR thing or if you're doing a headset thing, to just cast to a screen and record that. It's super helpful to just record the person with the device. The person
doing this.
Yeah. And it helps. 100%. It helps you connect with, oh, this is how people are using it. I'm not like, and we've also had a couple of conversations about like the slippery slope that is slick AR video marketing, and so that's another reason to show people how
look, Shanna, a whale.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll put that in post.
One of the talking about getting a demo over Zoom or over Skype right now is kind of like an interesting problem. How do you do a board of directors live demo? How do you do a demo for someone who's gonna give you the ability to be federally recognized as doing something? I have I just did a bid over the last 2 days where we have a possible client who makes a robot that flies and avoids normal traffic, and they want to do this whole demo to the federal government and to the board of directors that is this insane production on site, but it goes through Skype, it goes through Zoom. Like that's the end product is a little window on a cell phone, and it's the there's a lot more thought that has to be put into how do you demo something in 2D over the web in compressed video the same way you would do if you were standing at Magic Leap and someone had an ML1 on their head. It's like that's something I don't think any of us have really figured out perfectly yet. But it really is an interesting little problem, little art
Possibly an
technology
opportunity.
problem.
Problems are opportunities.
Yeah.
The part though is that it's one of those where, I always one that I like to hide a screen where I could see what they were seeing so that any other guest wouldn't see their experience. And I think it's one of the challenges by taking 3D content and then all of a sudden smushing it down to 2D. I feel like they don't always get the same impact. So it's like if you can ship them a device with a video that walks them through it, or jump on a Zoom and take them through the steps. That is something that I've done, in the past, and even I'm still doing today, is really almost taking people through like an onboarding where it's like, okay, like, and it's weird now because they're on the Oculus. So like they put on their device and they can't see the screen and I'm just seeing them like in this thing.
You're just talking to them, right? Yeah.
If you think about it, what difference does it make if we're in the same room or not? Like they can't see me anyway with VR.
Right.
So it's one of those that like a Zoom can be just as successful for these types of experiences, but I would prefer Zoom to sending them a video like the recording I did, because I think that one, you can feel my energy, whereas like when I'm recording a video, I'm like, I'm nervous. Yeah. Whereas if I'm in real life, like there's nothing for me to be nervous about. Like you have a
right.
I can answer any question you want on this device,
Right, you just get to be you.
You can tune the narrative live too, right? Like you were saying, like make it relevant to them. We had so Nick Lambert, who did our jingle, must give him credit always. He also works mostly in VR, and one of his tips, because he gives a lot of demos, he's kind of on the sales and BD side, and he said one of his tips is before he puts them in the headset.
But he is so much more than sales and BD.
He is much more than that. He gives them like a prep. He kind of tells them what they're about to see, and like here's what's going to happen, and try to, and maybe even try to balance that without spoiling the moments of delight, but also saying like, here's what you're going to see, here's what it's going to feel like, and kind of set their expectations. So it'd be kind of interesting to hear like what are the, like, that was a really great point. Like when you're demoing VR, they can't see you anyway, whereas when you were doing the Magic Leap side, you are a part of the demo content sometimes. Like there were a few demos we did where you stand in front of the person and you're a part of the show, for lack of a better word. So
well, people thought I was Micah for a while too, which was really
so like what are the differences? Like what has surprised you about getting into VR, like mostly compared to like your past several years?
Well, I mean, it's a little different in the sense of, okay, the Oculus Quest, like, it's really easy to use. I mean, there's not a ton of setup. There's no sensors. Like, it's just really easy. And I feel like they did a really great job on doing an on-device tutorial. So if you own the Quest, it's great. I do want to mention that, like, I'm not a gamer. Like, I've gotten more into gaming in the past couple years than I ever had in my whole life. So in understanding, like, the different buttons on the controls, like, I still don't know what half the buttons on the controls or controllers for the Quest do.
Yeah.
Whereas it was with Magic Leap, before we'd even start a demo, I would walk people through the components and all the buttons first, because I knew the moment they put it on their head, they're not going to listen to me anyway.
Right.
And so
giving, like, ah! Right.
I would say giving demos in virtual reality is a lot easier, because I do think, I mean, especially with the experiences that I'm working with now, there's an in-app coach that like basically does my job for me, So thinking about what an on-device tutorial looks or feels like, I mean, it can't be long. It's like, if it's not like under 60 seconds, people are over it, they're bored, they just want to move on to the experience. But having a little bit of a tutorial to help people walk through, like, hey, this is what you're going to do, it extremely simplifies the process.
Okay, I'm envisioning in the future here, we have the call center with people who are all wearing HMDs. And you're in the middle of Beat Saber or whatever thing, and you have a question, and you can pause the action, and then they show up right there, and they're in their HMD, and they can talk to you while you're still in VR, and you have your conversation. They oh yeah, you do that, you do this, here, let me show you,
Yeah.
and like that. that level of interaction. And I know what you're doing right now is you're building 2D demonstrations of what you're supposed to do next. But when we talked with Nick at the Wild, their ability to like walk up next to you and have a conversation with you and show you how to do things was so huge for me. I was like, it was the first time I'd ever had a multi-person VR experience that actually felt like there was a person there. Yeah. And that, I think, like, so what about that? What about building a VR demo room for content and for projects that you are working on, right? Like
love that. I absolutely love that. I mean, if you think about it, like, I haven't tried it yet personally, but it looks really cool. Magic Leap launched that spatial app.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, to me, I'm like, oh my God, there's my demo in a box. Like, literally, like, that's the perfect way to present this technology to somebody, is like, okay, turn it on, have them launch the app, and there you are in front of them in their home, I think it does take these things to a whole nother level. I think, it kind of almost goes back to like where volumetric capture is going. Like, if you could make it feel like I'm standing in your house right now, like, it is a much more human experience. People would be like, oh my God, that chick's really tall, right? It's like they then relate.
And you are.
Wait, But it's like, it just kind of creates more of a personal experience. And so if there's in the future, I hope to see that. And I hope that really from a, kind of a chat type of thing in general, I think we've learned a lot from the current times with how much we're utilizing Zoom, that like people, they want to have this ability. I mean, I've talked to more friends that I haven't spoken to, in months, sometimes even years during this kind of downtime. And I think it has definitely opened up to a new way for us to communicate. But I think that, XR can take this to a whole new level that is much more human, and that people in the future, like, they want it. It's scary right now for a lot of people, but I do think that that's where the tech is going.
Okay, I got another question. We live in a world of handles. Everyone is anonymous online, and you can be a troll, you can be an asshole, or you could be super awesome and kind.
Like me.
You can do whatever, like Paul, like Mug of Paul. But this concept of being close and being, like in the same space, it feels to me like it requires a little bit less anonymity. Like, I don't want to let Harkonnen 235 to just like show up in my freaking living room and start talking to me. I don't know who that guy is, or if it's even a guy, or human, could be an AI. So I'm interested in this idea of this kind of like human connection feeling through VR and also through AR. But I also want to, and I've said this before in other podcasts, I want us to be able to recognize who that person is and be able to contact them in real life. Like this, the anonymity of the net, I think, is really kind of hurt us socially.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of having that issue with Zoom a little bit, right? People were jumping into Zooms unauthorized and kind of bombing them, and right. That is the double-edged sword. Like, I was thinking through, like, of course, I'm thinking through the engineering challenges of, we're talking about doing a virtual demo room, and like for Zoom, what makes Zoom so powerful, or let's just say any video chat, modern video chat, is I can share my desktop. And so I have this conduit between, like, I can demo a desktop app for you or a web page or anything, because there is this little channel of screen sharing and desktop sharing. And like even in Spatial, so we did a little walkthrough of Spatial a couple episodes ago when it first launched on Magic Leap. And it's a really cool collaboration environment, and it does let you bring in media, but like I can't run it alongside like Tanandi and like walk you through it, so like there's some interesting technical hurdles. We're still a little bit attached to this app world where there's not this interoperable thing. And my hope is that, like, as we want to do more of this stuff, these systems will support it better. But that, like, I was thinking even earlier when we were talking about how do you share a Quest game or even a Magic Leap experience on a video, it's like, well, I would cast to a device and then I would record the screen or share that screen to the device, but then you're not seeing me interacting with it. You're just watching it passively. So, like, there's a lot of room to grow in this particular idea, right?
You guys checked out Live yet?
Yeah, I have. Yes, so Live is the mixed reality. Like, well, they call it's what they call mixed reality. Let's not get into the debate, but they kind of do the superimposing of the camera feed of the player on the virtual content. So you do get that like 2.5D type of video feed of me interacting with 3D content composed together. But it's kind of a pain to set up.
Yeah, and that's truthfully been a lot of the conversations I've been having recently, because I can tell you I have no idea how to set it up. And thinking about like what user-generated content can look like when people are sharing your experiences. It's like, I would love if everybody could create this mixed reality experience. But if somebody like me, like, I don't own a $3,000 PC, like, I've got my laptop, right? And so it's like, if I'm not figuring out how to do that, I don't think a lot of the world is going to figure it out yet.
Yeah.
But I do think it's coming. And I think that there is going to be tools that will make this a lot easier. I think that a lot of us forget how fast we're actually moving when it comes to this tech. Because it's like, okay, when I started at Magic Leap, it was still a refrigerator. And then you think about how small that HMD got by the time that I left Magic Leap. And even thinking about the Quest not having the sensors or cameras now, we are moving really fast. And I know it's not fast enough for a lot of us. But there's also, like, you know, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I went home before moving out to LA for, you know, my new role. And I had some girlfriends that we were talking about the technology and what I do for a living, and they're afraid of video conferencing. So to think that they would be like an avatar in somebody's living room because they work in a call center, like, they're scared shitless. And so I think it's like, as much as we are very impatient, I think that it still has to go a little slow, because we are overwhelming a large majority of the world still with this tech. And so it's figuring out how to make it feel safe and secure. But I think it's always going to be a challenge. Like, I just don't think people are going to get it yet.
How do you do that though? I mean, you've got a thing on your face. It's like, you know, you're wearing a face hugger. So how do you get people feeling comfortable and not afraid? Like I'm amazed that you had that level of feedback, that people were like afraid to put the thing on their face, that there was a fear. Like, what is that fear?
I mean, it really is intimidating, because I mean, I think a lot of people, there's always going to be the stigma around virtual reality that they're going to get nauseous, right? Oh, I'm going to get eye strain, I'm going to get nauseous. Whereas, you know, I can say the Quest, as somebody who has had issues like that before, I've had zero issues with the Quest as long as I'm moving while in the content. If I am stationary, I'll definitely get nauseous. With Magic Leap, I never got eye strain or sick unless something was miscalibrated. Yeah. But I think the biggest thing, though, in trying to understand how mass consumption, it's one of the things I'm really sad about right now during COVID, is that a lot of people, you know, they either haven't experienced virtual reality yet, or the only way that they're getting exposed to it is through like these virtual reality arcades. And so I'm in a bunch of those groups on things like Facebook, because I do present to a lot of people at one time. I thought it'd be a good place to learn from. And right now, most of them are having to shut their doors because of COVID, like permanently. Yeah. And I'm wondering, how is that going to impact this technology in the future? Because I don't think we ever praised them enough for what they were doing for us.
And there was so much good in VR. I was down in Santa Barbara visiting my cousin, and his wife's dad, who was like in his 90s. I put a VR headset on him, and I put him in Google Earth, and he was just like, it you could tell it was one of these like kind of life-changing moments for him. He's like, oh my God, where can I get one of these? I will sit in my house like all day long and just travel the world. Like he was just so like childlike glee about this thing. and yeah. So I agree with you about the LBEs that are kind of doing the vocalization that the rest of us are only doing in our demo rooms.
Well,
it's good work.
The crazy from like the startup and business side of it. I mean, the location-based VR companies were the ones that were kind of validating the market. Like they were getting the big investment and they were showing some traction. So thankfully the Quest came out. Honestly, I think the location-based companies, and some of them have done some really. I should really plug one of my friends. So Shiraz at Spaces. So they were doing a ton of location-based VR, and that all just got shut down. And like in a weekend, their CTO Brad Herman, I think he's Brad 3D on Twitter. He figured out, actually, this is totally relevant, what we were just talking about. He figured out how to get Zoom and VR to play together. So you can actually represent yourself in a Zoom call as a VR-based avatar. So what everyone viewing the call sees is your avatar with you moving around, and you actually have some media and elements you can control.
Is that like through SideQuest?
I don't know how they're distributing it, but how it works is he's kind of doing the same little hack that the Snap camera does, which is they present to the operating system as a virtual webcam. And so you just tell Zoom, I want to use this webcam, which is actually the Spaces cam, which is just feeding the VR feed into the Zoom call.
Right.
And so it was really smart, right? They've got thousands of people. They're trying to turn it into a product as quickly as possible. But it is a bummer because that is how and it was the most premium VR experience. The Void, for the longest time was the best thing, and it was how a lot of people were getting exposed to it. Thankfully, the Quest came out ahead of this, and Danny was just saying, it's selling out every time they get stock. You'll see. Yeah. I think they came in stock yesterday.
But it's from a business perspective, it's you have to think I ran a demo before the holidays where I needed 20 quests, and I got a call less than a week before my event that the quests were lost in shipping. And so for me to locate 20 quests around the holidays, it was like a magic trick. I can't believe I succeeded in that. But now I've been looking every day to order more quests for work because I've got to ship them to influencers or allies, whatever we want to call them. Thinking about press right now and doing these virtual demos. If you can't get a hold of the inventory, you're really kind of screwed right now. And with everything, the manufacturing shutting down in China, it really
that makes it worse.
I think that truthfully, if there would have been more stock, now is the time for VR to shine. VR, AR, XR, all of it, because we are all locked in our homes. We need that escape. And so it's this, now it's there's an outlet, but you can't get it, you know? So I think that's the struggle.
We talked to a couple of friends at Facebook. I think they were genuinely shocked by the demand for the Quest. And so I think they knew it was good. They knew it was kind of threading a needle of requirements, but I don't think they really. And so, yeah, they were having trouble.
It's really like the iPhone. It's like the iPhone 1 of VR. I mean, like everyone has picked it up. I just walked into my kitchen and my girlfriend is in the middle of the kitchen playing Beat Saber because she didn't want this camera to accidentally pick her up.
It'd be really
playing
awesome
Beat
if she
Saber
did
over
it.
there.
She could do it in the backyard.
She totally could. Yeah, she wouldn't.
On the lighting.
But
So I did test that. So my demos were outside. When I was taking through 10 people at a time, so I had 20 devices, right? So I found that from 7 to 9 in the morning, in December, January was fine. The moment you hit 10 a.m., the sun knocks
the track.
Direct.
The sun's hitting too direct. Yeah.
And then if you take it off wrong and the sun hits the optics, ultimately you can fry your Quest. That was no.
Yeah.
But I will say what got me interested in VR more than anything is that I called Anne-Marie Harbor after I had decided to leave Magic Leap. And her first put of input was, you need to buy a Quest and download Beat Saber. And so I immediately ordered one. It came 3 days later. I downloaded Beat Saber and I'm I'm sold. I get the world of VR. Yeah. This has totally answered so many questions because I couldn't use any of the other platforms.
Yeah.
But the Quest was definitely a game changer. But Christmas this year, they're sold out. And the hardest part though is who bought them? That's what we can't figure out.
Really?
It's kids? Is it millennials? I'm in a group right now, and I'm not 40, but it's Quest users over 40. And it's one of those where it's so interesting to see these people out there using it, and there's a bunch of retarees that bought them, and so it's
and this goes back to me being blown away playing Counter-Strike and getting my ass kicked handed to me by like a 50-year-old retiree, right? Yeah. Like I had no idea that these guys were gamers. Right. But yeah, there's a lot of people who are like retired or who are dads at home after the kids have gone to bed, and they're not little kids living in their mom's basement. They're
No, it opened up to a much larger audience, but I think it has a lot to do with the affordability of it. And I mean, the quality, it's good. Like the Quest is good. And I'm the worst critic. I will rip stuff to shit, whether it's hardware or content. And I'm like, no, I'm really like to run. Think about it. It was 10 people at a time. I ran 67 people through in like 2 days, and I had zero issues with the hardware.
Yeah.
Not
okay. So speaking of this, I know that you've been prepped for this. So I'm going to ask you a question that you may or may not be able to answer. But what can you tell? What can you tell us about this new product that you have coming out very soon?
Or actually, tell us about your company first.
Tell us about your company and then tell us about this new product you have coming out.
Well, I'm not going to say too much, but ultimately I left Magic Leap and I ended up taking a position in Los Angeles with a company called Within. And so Within, we have been working on, and they've been working on it for at least a year prior to me coming on board. But the new app is called Supernatural. And so it's a virtual reality fitness application. And
hold on. Wait. There's noise.
Yeah, there's some
what is that?
Noise. Was that me? Oh, was it because I was sharing? Does the Within website make noise?
I don't think so. The video might actually make some noise with the trailer. Yeah. So we just announced on Friday that Supernatural will be coming out. A little bit of echo there. That it will be launching to the world on, at least in the U.S. and Canada, on the 23rd. So next week.
And what is
is it rad?
It's so cool. So, I mean, I would never work on anything I'm not passionate about, but I have to say, like, I walked into Within and, I have a love for Chris Milk and Aaron Copeland from, interacting with them at Magic Leap for years. And I knew the quality bar that they set is ridiculously high. And so I walked into Within for my interviews and, I don't work out. I hate working out. I don't like fitness. I don't go to the gym. It's been at least 5 or 6 years since I actually would say I worked out. And so I went in and I tried Supernatural for the first time, and I was literally sweating bullets. I mean, just absolutely head to toe in sweat. And so it really does take it to a whole nother level. And there's you've got heart rate monitoring integrated into it. Like, it's awesome.
It actually connects up with the Apple Watch, right?
Yeah, it connects with the Apple Watch and a number of other heart rate monitors. It's so cool. And it's beautiful. I say that Chris is Chris and Aaron, their bar for quality, it's amazing. So I've never been so proud of the quality of a product before like this.
Is Within? I always wondered how much. I thought at one time Within was almost like a publisher, like they help distribute other people's experiences, but then they obviously also create their own. Has that changed, or did I misunderstand?
No, you're correct. So there is the Within app, which is available on the Quest as well, which has basically other developers, I don't want to say developers, but other types of content within it. And then there's also the Wonderscope app, which I do want to mention. The Wonderscope app is free until June for people who have kids. It's basically an AR app on mobile that helps teach kids how to read.
And it's a great mobile AR demo. I used to show it to people because it's super high production value on the animation and the artwork, and it kind of shows you, we're always looking for reasons to show people why you want to consume content in this way, where you can move around and walk up to stuff and kind of guide your own camera view. And Wonderscope was always a cool way to show people how high quality it could be.
Yeah.
Right. So Shanna, I got another question. I see in the demo that there's one, maybe two environments that are kind of cool sky environments with a lake below you and stuff like that, which is fantastic because that's how you want to, build your environment. You want to build it far away. Are
Yeah.
there any other environments other than that kind of like cool lake sky thing, or can you talk about that?
There's a lot of different environments. So, I mean, it'll take you anywhere from like the Great Wall of China to like Machu Picchu. I mean, every experience, like every song, it takes you into like this new landscape. And so I
gotta say the way that they've handled the 360 kind of video environment matched with the actual 6DoF polygonal environment is really cool. That's what we were talking about like way back in the day when we were talking about doing the near, mid, far stuff. Like this is exactly that.
Well, and this actually ties this video we're showing, right? This is an example of that live style, showing a real person interacting with the virtual content, and you get a real sense of what it just made me realize what you're really trying to convey is, what am I going to feel when I experience this for myself? And that is the most difficult thing to translate into video. So like like Shanna, that was so awesome, because I wouldn't have even thought to point out like live or live style kind of broadcasts of a real person in their own image, in their own movement. It's not an avatar, but they are superimposed with the virtual content. It is a very efficient way to show someone, like, as opposed to this view, which there's nothing wrong with it, right? This kind of first person view. Like that shows you what you'll see from your perspective, but there is something powerful about seeing like, oh man, somebody's really squatting down and moving and like really getting into it. Like,
right.
It does add a level of emotion to it almost,
Yeah. No, I especially again, as somebody who doesn't like working out, like I get into this and it's gamified what that feels and looks like. And so it's one of those that you also think about, like putting on this device. It's like this escape from reality, right? Especially when you're locked in your house right now, it's great. But even when you're not locked in your house, like you can take this thing with you anywhere,
Yeah.
So like by being able to just like put on the Quest and escape like that, it is not only great, from a fitness perspective, but from like a mental perspective. Like I know I don't have to see my mess while I go into this and work out, So it really, it does much more than just the fitness side of it. Like the fitness side is amazing, but it is also very mentally calming, which I love. I love our app. I mean, it's one of those, again, I would never work on anything I'm not passionate about. So, and these are just my views, but it's one of those that I am extremely proud of the product that we're putting out there. And I'm extremely excited and anxious to get this out to the world, because I think it does really kind of meet a need that we weren't going after before.
Yeah.
Like lots of different things that you can do on these devices, but like everything is really targeted as gaming. And it's like, as a gamer, like I love my Quest, but like I can only do the same thing so many times. Whereas like this is offering you like new content, like on a daily basis,
I'm the same way.
So I am solidly on board, and I will buy it, because I have tried. I have tried Beat Saber, and Beat Saber is fun. And as soon as it starts like throwing too many things at me, I get super like freaked out, and I get like my heart rate goes up. I'm like and I'm okay with working out. And I love working out. I love going for bike rides, which I don't do anymore. And I love going for walks, which I don't do anymore. But it would be really nice to have something that allows me to get a rhythm going.
Well, and it sounds like this app actually will dynamically tune to your comfort level or what you want to do. So it's not like going to overwhelm you with.
Yeah.
It'll actually be like, okay, we can take it down a notch.
Because there's that place where you get
easier. I think the word dynamic, like it's like we call it dynamic difficulty. It makes it's not everybody knows what that means. So it's like as you get better, the app will actually get harder with you. So it's a cool.
There's a thing that happened to me when I was training for the AIDS ride before I joined Magic Leap, where you get to this place where your body is moving, and it just feels like your head is sitting on top of this body that's moving. Like you're not feeling the pain. It's just this machine. and you've got this like rhythm going, and you're just cruising along. And that for me is where I feel like I can just go for freaking ever, and I get a really good workout, and it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking for in a new VR app, is something that allows me to get into that kind of rhythm, you know?
I don't know if it's the same thing, but there is the flow state, which we get into when we're being creative or we're problem solving. And man, we should get Kent by on this show, because he could talk about flow state for 4 hours. But there is that flow state moment where things become automatic, and you're also not it's not a cognitive load to like continue on. It's like just coming, it feels like it's just flowing out of you, right? It's like that is that magic moment for all creatives and and engineers that are like, oh, that's the dragon you chase your whole life, basically.
And there's some data too, like obviously, like in taking like a new role and trying to understand like the fitness industry, which is totally outside of my normal knowledge, right? A lot of the studies that are out there say that you will actually try to exert 10% more energy working out in virtual reality than you would if you walked into a gym. 10% more energy. Like, that's incredible, because it's like, instead of like looking at yourself in the mirror and judging yourself, or like your phone's
worrying about whether that guy over there is looking at you working out.
You're just your comfort level, your guard's down. Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, well, I wonder, like, Estella, I'm gonna call it. She kind of made a joke, I think, but she was like, does it also include the fan to blow your hair like the woman in the demo video? But
truthfully, a lot of our team actually does put a fan on them while they're doing the experience, because you get that cool air blowing.
But there's also
full experience.
But it also goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, this is marketing, and I mean, like, you do want to convey like excitement, and like there is some production value going on there. But yeah, we like we're talking about the creativity element and getting into that flow state, and we talked about it with Estella, actually, I think a little bit, like, and I wonder how much of that is with VR. You're in your nest, right? You're in your house, you're in your comfort zone, and so you don't have these little barriers up, these insecure, there's no inhibitions. Your inhibitions.
I mean, there's so many things that it resolves. Like, I mean, I can tell you, like, my mother basically my entire life struggled with her weight, and she basically had lost 100 pounds, gained it back, and like, she's not a gym person. Like, she's afraid to walk into the gym. She thinks she's gonna look stupid. Like, whereas with something like this, it's like she's in her living room. Like, nobody's judging her. She doesn't give a shit. She's sweating. She doesn't care. Whereas, like, you think about how many girls show up to the gym wearing makeup. Like, by the time I'm done with this, my makeup is like smushed down my face,
You look like the Joker.
Like, I showed up for me.
Or Alice Cooper.
Me, and I worked out. Whereas if I go to the gym, it's like, who am I trying to impress? Like, you're not checking in at the gym. Like, you're checking in on yourself, and you're going into this, this awesome experience. And it's like, it's fitness based, but for me, it's like, okay, I'm not a fitness person, but it's the challenge of it. Like, and I take it very seriously. Like, if I miss a target, I'm like, ah, shit, like I want to win. And there's like this leaderboard, and I can see it, like how other people are doing. And it's one of those that, like, you are competing with yourself, but at the same time, there is this element of competition that, like, so-and-so got a higher score, but they didn't see me like working out and like looking all awkward with my lanky arms, It's like, it does make me feel much more comfortable to do it in my home. Like, I'm the person who couldn't get through a normal workout without laughing. And now it's just like,
and this is the reason why I don't go to gyms, because I feel weird about like pushing it in front of people who might just be not working out at all and just observing me and making judgments, because I worry about that, that's why I love to bike ride. When I go for a bike ride with friends, or if I go for playing disc golf or something, we're all doing it at the same time. And there's no one out there who can judge us unless they're, riding along next to us. And if they are, then they're not our friend if they're judging us. So they're not invited,
Spencer, you're a little bit of a special case, because you fart uncontrollably when you exert physical effort. And that...
Well, and you apparently enjoy that because you ride behind me.
I'm
Sorry.
like, I do record images of you on the multi-person. Spencer, how does that work? Do you go on the back on that multi-person bike, or are you up front?
You always want Spencer on the back. Trust me.
Always, you never want Spencer in front of you. Yeah.
Man, I just want to time check. It's like we're an hour and 20 minutes in, and man, I knew it was going to be chock full of interesting stuff. But was there anything we didn't get to? I feel like we covered a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Like, so, I mean, it's really great to have guests. I'm really proud that we've managed to get like really smart people that work on this stuff every day, especially underrepresented people, badass females. We love it. It's been awesome. And thank you so much. I would just remind people that you can always get to our YouTube channel through watch.xrtalk.net. You can always chat with us on Discord at chat.xrtalk.net.
Like and subscribe.
You can like and subscribe. I didn't do that today. I didn't plug as much today. Shanna, the running joke. You know what I will brag about? I didn't do one level check to the crowd today.
No, we didn't. No,
Yeah.
we were fully audio on
AV
board.
was on point. So that's a win. We're getting a little better at this. We actually already know what our guest is next week, and we're not going to keep it a secret. Our buddy Craig Winslow, who is an amazing projection mapping artist, just a really awesome person. And he loaned his Lightform beta unit to Spencer just before we all went into shelter. He was only going to get it for the weekend, and now Spencer's had it for weeks. So I think we're going to do some
playing with it.
Yeah, we're going to do some live Lightform tinkering so everybody can kind of see what it is about projection mapping, how I think it's related to augmented reality and spatial computing. Really cool stuff. So I just love that we have this little party space where we talk about heady stuff and then we get down and dirty and talk about making this stuff. So thank you so much for the audience. There was a lot of I didn't want to interrupt the we were having such a good conversation, but the actual chat was having their own conversation. There was a whole love fest going on in the chat. So that's awesome. So thanks so much. So I guess the only thing, so Shanna, so we have this triple column view, and we have to do a little poster frame for the video. And actually Estella, who's been in the chat, she kind of started this little pattern of we do a little pose for the poster frame. So we've had people do we've done cross hands. I always forget which direction to go. We've done last week we did hear no evil, see no evil. You want to do so we could do all kind of whatever.
Here, I'll put my arm around Shanna, and you put your arm around Shanna.
I always forget which direction.
Wait, but then I have to get my other hand out here. Wait, how does this work? But there we go.
I'll get a screen grab later.
Love it.
So thanks so much. By the way, we didn't really mention it, but this was kind of short notice. I only asked Shanna yesterday, and thank you so much for
thank you.
Getting
that was
the proper
super
clearances.
Cool.
And
I was like, oh shit, we're gonna have to hold this whole thing by ourselves. Oh god.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I actually didn't tell Shanna that Spencer texted me a few hours ago, and he was like, "So, what are we gonna do today?" And I was like, "Trust me, I got something lined up." And he's like, "Okay, but what are we gonna talk?" I'm like, "We got it." He's like, "Okay."
Yes. Well, again, and all my views are my own that we discussed today. I mean, it's very much this is. I just wanted to come hang out with you guys, and so
this is the fine print.
Yeah.
Hit us with the fine print.
My opinion is all my own. Yeah.
That's right. That was
all right. And before we leave, I just want everyone to envision Paul writing behind me.
Yes.
Right. While Spencer is uncontrollably farting.
Thanks, Shanna.
Yeah,
yes.
thank you so much.
Freaking cool to see you.
Oh, let me send us off with some music.
Yes.
Thank you, Nick Lambert.
XR Talk with Paul and Spencer.
God, that voice. I'm just gonna I get